The most iconic roles of Tom Hanks' film career. Tom Hanks is a living legend. When you hear his name, dozens of his roles likely flood into your brain. The two-time Oscar winner has portrayed so many iconic characters, and sometimes he's even done memorable work in movies that maybe weren't so great. Here is a ranking of the 25 most legendary Hanks roles over the years. Long may he reign. The idea of Hanks in a Coen Brothers movie was loaded with potential, so it's a shame that The Ladykillers is generally considered the least of good movies from Joel and Ethan. That being said, no Coen Brothers movie is without its charms, and Hanks is clearly having fun playing a bumbling villain. He also makes a meal of the Southern accent. The Dragnet movie isn't great, and it's Dan Aykroyd who gets to play Sergeant Joe Friday. However, we have to include this role if only because of the rap song made for it that features Hanks rapping the plot of the movie. Mr. White isn't a huge role in That Thing You Do. That's because Hanks was also making his writing and directing debut. It's a fun film with an incredibly catchy soundtrack, which will forever keep the movie in people's minds. That's the power of an earworm. Walt Disney is one of the most iconic people in the history of pop culture. So when a living legend stepped into the role as Hanks did Fort saving Mr. Banks, it turned a lot of heads. The film, which tells the tale of Disney trying to convince P.L. Travers to let him make a Mary Poppins movie, didn't make a huge impact, but everybody still remembers it as the movie where Tom Hanks plays Walt Disney. Charlie Wilson's Wart should have arguably made a bigger impact. It has two huge stars in it in Hanks, who plays the titular Charlie Wilson, and Julia Roberts. However, both are blown off the screen by Philip Seymour Hoffman in a tremendous performance that got him an Oscar nomination. When you take eyes off Hanks, you're doing something impressive. Yes, Bosom Buddies was a silly sitcom with a goofy premise. Two guys pretend to be ladies so they can live in an all-women building. Yet how many times have you heard people talking about Hanks getting his start on Bosom Buddies? It's part of his story, if only because people find it funny. Ray Peterson is a generic name which may make it hard to place. That's true even if you've seen The Burbs, Joe Dante's 1989 horror comedy. It's a fun movie and Hanks is great in it. He wasn't quite a huge star yet though, which may have led to it being overlooked. Also, his wife is played by Carrie Fisher. Talk about a power couple. For a little while, Sully was seemingly all over the place. That's what happens when you land a broken plane on the water and save everybody's life. Naturally, a movie was made about the event, and of course Hanks was hired to embody Sully's stoic, mustachioed demeanor. Is there a greater honor than being played by Tom Hanks in a biopic? Hanks is certainly making a choice in playing Parker, the longtime manager of Elvis Presley. No, it's not all the makeup in Baz Luhrmann's kaleidoscopic biopic. Hanks is using an interesting voice in the role as well, and he's definitely not reining it in. Like the whole movie, Hanks Parker is over the top and definitely memorable as a result. And yet, somehow his turn as Geppetto in Pinocchio, also a 2022 film, may have been even odder. Speaking of biopics about captains, a lot more was asked of Hanks in Captain Phillips. Somehow he was in an even crazier situation than in Sully, as he played the captain of a boat overrun by pirates. The movie got several Oscar nominations, but surprisingly none was for Hanks. Maybe that's because the number one thing people remember from this movie is Barkat Abdi, who was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, saying, "I'm the captain now. You've got mail may feel silly now in this modern world." It's a movie built around people exchanging emails with a title taken from AOL. Nevertheless, at the time it was a wildly successful romantic comedy starring Hanks and Meg Ryan. Those two will show up again later on this list. The Green Mile is one of those cases of a famous movie where maybe you don't remember the characters' names. You just remember them as Tom Hanks and Michael Clarke Duncan. This was definitely Duncan's most memorable role, while it's middle of the pack for Hanks. Still, lots of people remember Hanks from this film. Joe versus the Volcano isn't as well remembered of a movie as The Green Mile. However, while Hanks arguably plays second fiddle to Duncan in the latter, he's the clear star of the former. His character's name is right in the title. That's pretty uncommon even for Hanks. You definitely remember Hanks' character in this movie, and it's an underrated gem too.